So cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first of our masterclasses. This class will be around the role of technology in a sustainable fashion ecosystem. With this class, we hope to engage around what sort of technologies and what sort of systems and ecosystems that we can start to build locally that fits our context. And we hope to lean on Associate Professor here, Jonas Larsson from the Swedish School of Textiles, who can share his insights as somebody who's considered an expert in this field. So just to get the class started, my name is Tshepo, as I did say earlier. My role at Rewoven is I'm the Chief Operations Officer. So I basically manage the day-to-day running of the business, which generally includes looking at the systems and looking at how it is that we could better improve how it is that we do what we do, and how we go about implementing and achieving the goals that we've set out, which is obviously to divert textile waste from landfill and contribute to a sustainable fashion ecosystem locally. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Jonas here, who can let you guys know who he is, his experience, and what drives him.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tshepo. First, let me say I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored to have invited to the literally other side of the world for me. It's a great time to be here also, because at home in Sweden it's awful weather right now. So this is sort of opposite as well. Let's see if I can get my slide going here, or my slides. Do you see them? No? Oh, now they are, yeah. I was invited here to speak about the role of technology in a sustainable fashion ecosystem. And I work at the Swedish School of Textiles and Science Park Borås. And I am currently involved in something called Textile and Fashion 2030, which is a governmental mandate to help Swedish small and medium fashion enterprises to become more sustainable. What we're essentially doing is we're helping them to create a systematic approach to sustainability. Right now we're working with 170 companies. So I think it's going quite well. So what about me? Well, I'm Jonas Larsson. I am a father of Erling, 2 years old. This is a picture from the summer. I'm a vertical. This is on the trampoline. Yeah, I was going to take a cute end of summer Instagram picture, but it never happened. Yeah. I'm a vertical person. I like gravity sports like mountain biking and surfing and skiing and stuff like that. And my purpose with what I do every day is to eliminate waste from apparel and textile value chains. So relating to what Xavier said earlier, this is my purpose. And I hope I'm doing it right. And I think that you will see this purpose in all of the projects that I have been involved in.
Tell me, Jonas, before I let you move on, what got you into this area? What got you passionate about this particular problem?
I have always been passionate about environment. I started to think about this when I was in high school a lot, and wanted to develop sustainability indexes back then. But I was advised not to by our teacher. But then I kept on doing this, and then in university I studied production technology and logistics. And then I get to study the lean manufacturing principles. And
so then in engineering, sorry.
Engineering, yeah.
Okay,
so I'm an engineer, yeah. So then I got into how to remove waste from textile value chains. And I think if we look at the data, I mean, then it's pretty obvious. I think 50% of the climate impact comes from waste. So if we could just do useful things, I'm pretty certain that we could continue to consume fashion in a democratic way without feeling too bad about it. But we have to remove waste. And waste comes in many different shapes and forms.
Okay. Cool.
So when I was invited to come here, I was very honored, and I was very happy. I'm still happy that I'm here, and I was happy. And then it struck me, I'm going to fly. I'm going to fly all over the world for a 2-hour masterclass. So I brought this big, black carbon cloud with me here. So I have had a ton of anxiety over that cloud. And then it struck me, okay, but in order to sort of make up for this, if I can be very inspiring here today, maybe, and then you can make choices that sort of remove some of the damage.
Then you're somewhat carbon neutral.
Yeah, somewhat carbon neutral, yeah. But I also don't want to, hand that over to you. So I take on the responsibility to be inspirational. Yeah.
I don't dodge for a second.
So how I thought that this couple of hours would unfold is something like this. This is, I think, I just wanted to introduce this idea of the double design diamond, because it's rather useful for if you want to have workshops or something like that, or if you want to just make a project and have some form of structure to it. And the diamonds is essentially how we expand our ideas and how we focus them, and how we expand them again, and how we focus them, and how that's a process. And I'm going to try to follow that process. And I from this morning's talk here, I understood that this is a rather interactive audience.
Yes.
So I don't think it's going to be difficult to get you speaking. That is always, when you don't know the audience, it's always a bit nervous to but you are talkative, so that's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I think that's how we'll find value in having those classes. If you guys actually interact, if you don't understand anything, ask. If you have opposing views, that came through really well in this morning session. Like, people have opposing views, and my belief is that opposing views are actually complementary because it increases everyone's perspective. So yeah, if you've got opposing views to anything that me and Jonas are saying up here, please do challenge us. We want this class to be challenging, we want it to be interactive, and we want it to be conversational. So it mustn't just be us two chatting. Yeah. So talk to us, please.
Yeah, and feel free to ask whenever you like.
Yeah,
you don't have to wait for the next free space. Just ask. So we're going to do something like this. Normally what you do is you formulate a question, you explore what has impact, you define possibilities, you write this design brief, you explore ideas and solution, evaluate ideas, and then deliver results. So something like that. So what I want to start with, and I want to explain a little bit how I think. I think it's irrelevant. I think it is relevant, not irrelevant. And when we work a lot with the circular economy at the Swedish School of Textiles and Science Park Borås, and that is, and there are lots of useful tools in that toolbox. But very often when we speak about circularity, at least in the Swedish context, we focus on recycling material. So we want to collect material, we want to chemically break it down to new polyester or new viscose, and we want to make new material out of that.
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah.
You mentioned chemical recycling, and that being the focus for Sweden. Why are you more inclined towards chemical over mechanical?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I will come to a little bit later my doubts of chemical recycling
Okay.
and why I prefer other types of recycling.
Okay.
But I think, so I don't know. I think that one of the reasons are we have H&M, and they want a stable supply of material. So I think that might have something to do with it. And also IKEA. They are, I think, dependent on large volumes of predictable quality of the materials.
Okay.
So they can't have a little bit of that and a little bit of that. They have to have large volumes of one material.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the reasons why. But I don't know. But anyway, so how we often think is that either circularity, it can either be a circular design or a circular material or a circular business model. But this isn't really true, because I see it as there's no trade-off between these. You can't have a great circular material that can loop in infinity, and then you have an awful design or an awful business model. So if your business model produces 50% overproduction that nobody wants to buy, but you're doing this with a great material, then that doesn't make it circular. So we have to think about these three, and we have to make sure that they sort of move upwards and forward together in some way. And I think this is so. This is how we see circularity. And from today, if you only bring one thing from this lecture, it's this slide. So, Tshepo, I don't know if you can see it, but
no,
it's behind you there. So there is a group, it's called the Delegation for Circular Economy in Sweden. They have developed a very nice way of relating to circular design. And it's this. You have the circular design principles on the left, and you have the use phase, or prior to use or after use, on the horizontal axis. So I think it's, as a designer or as a product developer or as a developer of the business model, I think it's relevant to ask yourself how, prior to use phase, how do we design out waste and pollution? So how do we make sure that this garment uses as little resources as possible, and that we sell as close to the customer as possible to minimize overproduction? And then during use, how do we keep material and products in use? So how do we make sure that, like Sneaker Shack here, how do they help people keeping things alive or keeping shoes alive? How do we, do that on a larger scale? How do we make sure that products and materials are kept alive? And then after use, how are these products and materials brought back into circulation? But also here is important that how do we regenerate natural systems? Because the fashion and textile industry has done so much damage to environment already. So we really have to think about how can we work with restorative technologies or methods.
Is that more inclined to like working with the agricultural sector?
Yeah.
Super. Gotcha.
Exactly. So working within the natural loops or natural cycles. So we have for water, carbon, rock, nutrition cycles, phosphorus cycle, and a few more. And how can we not disturb them and have a fashion system that is within those cycles? And I will come back to that later in the presentation. We're going to speak about technology here.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can speak about technology without also thinking about cultures and politics. And because these seems to move together. So if you have a newly developed technology, like let's say the internet, for example, that's a rather new developed technology. It's difficult for the politicians to keep up with the development on the internet and putting new laws in place because it moves so fast.
Yeah.
And the culture you know, develops on the internet. And it's the same with
Facebook.
Facebook, for example.
The role of Facebook, yeah.
Goes way too fast.
Yeah.
And the politicians can't keep up.
Yeah.
And then this new culture is created with this new technology.
Regulation is always catching up.
Yeah.
Never really in front of.
Exactly.
In front of
so and that's
and
if these three if one move too fast, then the other two won't keep up, and then you sort of risk to rip the fabric of society apart if you do this, if these movements are on too big scale.
Do you feel as though regulation should be at the forefront?
Yeah, so very good question with regulation, because this is a very local debate for Sweden now that we've had, but we've had two new regulations that has been that they want to set in place. One is product responsibility, that the brands become responsible for the garments in the use phase and in the after use phase.
Yes.
And the other one is a chemistry tax, that we wanted to remove all the chemicals, essentially, from garments, all the dangerous chemicals.
That's a big challenge.
That is a big challenge. And why these two examples are interesting is that in one of the cases, with the product responsibility, the government developed that together with the industry.
Okay.
And then it was accepted by the industry.
I think a similar thing is happening in Cape Town with producer responsibility and factories and manufacturers having to be more responsible for what it is that they produce and what happens in the, like you're saying, with the product after its life cycle.
Yeah.
So I think not too far behind South Africa.
No.
Yeah, I love that.
But then came the chemistry tax, and that was done not in collaboration with the technology and the industry, and then it was that was not well received at all.
I imagine.
So then they sort of they didn't care about the culture within the industry. They did it on their own, and then they didn't work. So we have to sort of think about these things together when we develop our systems.
Tell me, if we're working collaboratively, do you not think it takes too long, especially with, the back and forth that generally exists between states and corporates?
Yeah.
Do you not think it will take too long, especially given if we just look at the conversation around COP26 and the sort of timeline that we're working with?
Well, exactly, and it takes too long. It feels like it takes too long.
Okay.
Because this process, to me, seems to take forever. We have developed for 15 years different solutions to the problems that the industry is facing, and for me, nothing seems to happen. So this dynamic is super frustrating, because I think it's just taking too long. But it seems to be the way it has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just decided to live with that. Yeah.
Okay. Is it not something that frustrates you as you're a doer, you're an engineer. Engineers are generally doers. So when you're working on a problem as big as this, do you not feel frustrated at, the pace at which change is happening?
Super frustrated.
How do you stay with it then?
No, but I just that's I don't know.
It's part of the job, I guess.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And also, just a little bit. So maybe this one is the one that's helping me. So I don't know if you can have a look. So why we have to fantasize and why we have to stay ahead of the politicians and everything. So I think about innovation something like this, that we have the things. We have a sort of level of innovation on the left here, and we have time on the horizontal axis. And we do things on different levels. We have the stuff on imperative level. They are the things that we have to do, and that I, as a researcher, can't do much about. Then there are the things that we can do. Those are maybe the things that we have developed 10 years ago, but they have now come in place, and are the things that we can do. And then are the things on aspirational level. These are the things that we can only fantasize about. But we have to fantasize now, because within a couple of years, the things on aspirational level will have reached actionable level. And then in a few more years, the things on actionable level has reached imperative level. So maybe this is why how I sort of stay alive or stay sane, is that I know that I have to keep on imagining things, because that's we have to imagine 10 years ahead in some way, yeah. Because what we imagine now will be in place in a few years. So why the purpose here of this this presentation here is to imagine possibilities for circularity in the apparel and textile industry, and to create some sort of aspirational concept.
I think we've got a question.
Yes.
Sorry, Kevin.
Oh, can you come closer?
Cool, we'll get a rolling mic.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on. Thanks, Gabe. So yeah, on that point you were mentioning about imagination and it being very important for us to imagine it. Obviously, to create things, to innovate, it's quite an important thing. But you know, do our educational systems, you know, how do we overcome the current systematic environment that doesn't maybe allow for us to imagine? Or why don't we have as many people feeling comfortable to create and imagine? Because it's very important.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I come from Sweden, and we're South Africa, so we have different, very different educational systems. But I think it's a very good question, and well, hopefully, there is one politician here today that listens
Or watching.
And can understand that we need this space within the educational sector or within the universities to think freely about anything, really. So for us, or for me, we are super privileged where we are. We have people are building sort of innovation spaces for us and giving us all the machines. And at some point, I hope that we can bring some of that here also. Yeah, but it's super difficult. But it's a long process, I suppose. So I'm just going to think a little bit what underlying factors here that have impact. What do we need to relate to? And what are sort of the needs of the users? Ann-Gret, a folder back, will speak later about consumer behavior. So she will be able to give better talks on what the consumer wants and how they behave. But I will just touch upon that a little bit. I like the report from State of Fashion and how they describe what we need to think about the next couple of years. And I've just highlighted a few things from this last year's report, or for this year's report. And what we're looking at is sort of new flexible business models for faster decision making. We have consumers that expect that humans in the value chain is treated with dignity and respect. We want to be able to connect to the consumer in new digital ways. We want to increase sell-through by on-demand manufacturing. And we want to move away from transactional-based relationships to deeper partnerships and responsibility. One, I would say, this picture here is a simplified version of the textile supply network, and it's rather complicated and a lot to relate to. But this is the system that we have to work to change. This picture was created by a friend of mine for the reason of starting to have the same language when we speak about the value chain. So when we talk about tier 3, for example, in the textile value chain, that we mean fibers, feathers, down processing, spinners, film and tape manufacturers. So when we speak about that, and this is for transparency reasons. So when we speak about transparency, we use the same languages. I've been in meetings where people have talked about transparency with big brands, like the biggest brands in the world.
I think that's what's happening locally as well.
Yeah.
You guys agree with me that transparency seems to be how everyone's going about the sort of sustainability conversation, these big corporates? No?
Yeah.
Disagreeing views this side?
I think a lot of people are a lot more invested in saying they're sustainable, but very few people, because I think also a big part of being transparent is that you should also be transparent about your supply chain. So yes, you bought all your fabric in South Africa, but where was it from? And then they're very happy to call themselves sustainable, but you haven't even done half that work. Or you're not actually paying everyone minimum wage, you just can say you're sustainable. I think there's a long way to go. If you read most brands here, sustainability pages, it's a lot of fluffy language about we care about the earth, we care about this, but they don't give you hard facts of like, this is the polyester percentage, this is what we're trying to do, we can only do this much. It's just a lot of like fluffy language. I think we're very, very far from this, like very far.
Yeah, I agree, and I will. I'm involved in a project that we're trying to solve this, and I will come back to that later. So in this meeting anyway, we spoke about transparency, but it turned out that the people in the meeting, when we spoke about transparency, didn't speak about the same thing. So some brands talked about transparency to tier 1. They thought that now we're transparent. And while others, it meant that they are transparent when we have all the way to tier 4. So therefore it was very important to sort of try to iron out what do we call the different tiers in the supply chain. And just to give you a little bit of where the impact in the supply chain happens. So these are percentages. And I took up climate change. And climate change happens mostly in tier 2 and tier 3. Human health is impacted mostly in tier 2 and tier 3. And freshwater withdrawal also is mostly in tier 2 and tier 3, but also some in tier 4 because of the cotton growing. So this is important because of what we spoke about earlier, and recycling of fabrics. So when we recycle when we break down fibers and recycle them on chemistry level, those fibers go all the way back to tier 4.
Okay.
And then they get the whole environmental impact again. So we want to recycle as close to the customer as possible.
I get you on that, but around chemical recycling, have we figured out or have we hit the mark when it comes to the yield? Because that's generally the sort of, thing that's holding us back when we look at chemical recycling. Because if we're talking something that can be done at scale, then now we're talking. That's the only time corporates, that's the only time people are really interested. Because if it's at a small scale, and the conversation you and I were having yesterday around getting big businesses, getting governments involved, it does take scale. So do you see chemical recycling being able to reach the scale that it needs to for it to have that impact?
It's really difficult with the yield because not everything that is collected can be recycled.
Yes, and especially because we actually don't know most of the time what's actually in our garments.
So, and that is a big problem. I don't know how they plan to solve it, the chemical recyclers, but I know that they want sort of bed linens from hotels and as white and pure as possible for their operations. And also the chemistry is very important here, because we don't know anything about the sort of chemistry network. We know that to get 1 kilo of useful chemistry into our material supply chain requires 5 kilos of wasted chemicals. So we're producing a lot of chemicals that we're not using and that they might be polluting. But we don't have any aggregated data on the chemistry supply chain as we have for the material supply chain. For material, we have tons of LCAs and stuff like that, but on chemistry, we don't know much.
And I guess that's where the importance around transparency comes.
Exactly. Yeah. Transparency is. I mean, transparency. We also face that companies become transparent, and then they say that, "Hey, we're transparent. We are sustainable now." But that is also not true, because you can be. I will come to a project later where the transparency showed that this looks awful. This data is horrible for this company. So it showed the opposite, that it's less sustainable. So sometimes you see that we're transparent, and then you would think that, but that makes it sustainable. But it's not. It's great to have transparency to be sustainable, but you could also be sustainable without being transparent. So, yeah. But anyway, if you look at the consumers, what do they want? And there's tons of surveys about the consumers, and this particular one is from Fashion Revolution, who also does the transparency index. And what they want, fashion, they like transparency. They want to work with that. Essentially, in summary, 80% of fashion consumers want to do good. So the industry have to give them good choices, or a way to relate to how they can do good. We've done a study on different consumers, and essentially, I'm not going to go very deep into this. I think I've asked for you to distribute these slides.
Yes.
So you can have this later if you want to have a look at it. But what this survey showed is that there are lots of consumer groups, and they relate so differently to sustainability. So we identified 8 consumer groups in this survey. They're named here. So one is toxic-free and conscious about health, life simplers, style-conscious creators, technology optimists, the conscious family, and young activists. And these different groups want to have information in different ways to be able to make better choices. And they are also worried about different things. Some of them are worried about animals. Some of them are worried about carbon dioxide. Some of them are worried about water impact. So they will relate to it in different ways. And they also have different amount of time and resources to get better products. One very useful tool is the Green Deal from the European Union. I know we're not in the European Union now, but I think the sort of how it's set up and how it's designed is very useful to have as a sort of way of relating to your operations. So how it essentially is built up, it's 3 components and 6 environmental objectives. And the 3 components are, the first one is that if you want to have an economic activity in the EU and say that it's sustainable, you have to show that your activity substantially contributes to at least one of the 6 environmental objectives. And these are climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, circular economy, water, pollution prevention and control, and protection of ecosystems. the other one is that you have to show how, and this transparency comes in and becomes very important here as well, because you have to show that you don't do significant harm to any of the other 5 objectives. And then you also have to comply with the minimum safeguards, and that is you have to follow the human rights, and you have to show how you follow the human rights. So this brings us to the define possibilities stage here, and what do you see? What do you think are the possibilities so far? And start with some comments, perhaps, or questions.
Questions? Do you have the mic?
No. Hi. I'm Floyd. I'm a fashion designer. What I wanted to ask you, you're speaking about sustainability, right? And the whole world is on board with sustainability. But do you think Africa gets enough credit for the sustainability that we do? Because the fabrics that we use as South African fashion designers is the junk that the rest of the world doesn't want. And we make these beautiful pieces with it. And it's almost like, still sustainability needs to be shoved down our throats. It's like, hey, man, we wake up every day and we do the sustainability thing. Are studies being done, though, of how much sustainability and how much Africa is helping out the whole world in terms of sustainability by consuming all that junk that they don't want? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, please, can you mention some stats for that?
I think, you're absolutely right. And this has been... I think that's what the sort of recyclers and when we're collecting things in Sweden or in Europe, we put it in different bins, and then we collect it, and then we sort of take the best parts from those bins, and then the rest. So that is about 10%. And then 30% we send to East Europe, because, and then the rest is sent to Africa. And this becomes landfill, and this becomes waste here. So that's a terrible, it's a terrible practice that it's being sent here, and it's also destroying the local local industries. So I think if I could decide, that would just stop. And there are other ways to work with fashion together than just shoving trash or shuffling trash here. But to answer your question more specifically, I think that just listening to the panel here this morning gave me a lot of new insights on how you work with the industry here in South Africa, and how we can learn from that, where we work with the local industries, and work more with local Swedish industries. So I think that how sort of the way you're working with sustainability, I think that we can learn a lot from that. I'm not gonna sort of get lost in how you say
The nitty-gritty.
in nitty-gritty things, but I think that absolutely we can learn a lot, and it's gonna be great to. I think. No, never mind. We'll speak about that later. Yeah. Yeah.
So, at Rewoven, because you guys obviously are very heavily involved with. Wait, could no one hear me? Damn.
Yeah.
So, because you guys are very heavily involved with Textile Way, so do you guys, maybe you could help him in terms of finding information on what's the African contribution, or the stats, or just the figures of what we're doing here in terms of sustainability? Because I find it very hard to find information on that, even though I'm sure there's a lot of stuff. But what's your guys' experience with that as well?
Cool. As Rewoven, I can definitely say we're definitely in the infancy stage of collecting information and really understanding the problem. We're still getting to grips with what the problem is. And the reason for this is before we even started doing what it was that we do, we found that this was a global problem, and the question, our sort of value proposition was driven around, okay, cool, does this problem exist locally? And you can research and you can find out how many tons are being dumped in Sweden, in Europe, in America, everywhere. And when we looked locally, nobody had a clue. Government didn't have a clue. The corporates who were creating the waste didn't have a clue. So we sort of had to start like from A, like, okay, this is how develop sort of like an infrastructure as to how it was that we were going to collect this waste, and how it was that we were going to collect the data around it as well. So I think as we continue to grow, we will share a lot of that information, because we think that's valuable and not only for us as a business, but obviously for everybody that works in this industry. Cool, anybody else?
First and foremost, Floyd, thank you so much, my brother. You've raised...
Sorry, do you mind standing up? I just can't see your face, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, first and foremost, Floyd, thank you so much, my brother, for raising that point. It is as if you were with us, with Tunuke and myself, speaking about exactly that. That's where I was speaking about trying to practice restraint, but thank you. Now I can speak to it. It is definitely something that I think, again, and by all means, Johannes, please don't feel the pressure of feeling that you have to speak for the whole of Sweden. It is not on you to have the resolve. I think we mustn't forget or lose sight of the fact that we're here because we're trying to create a better future. So it's okay, my brother, please. Don't be nervous, eh? It's okay. Second to that, I think, obviously we're in this continent of Africa whereby the textile industry is literally second to agriculture. And by second, I mean, I think it's 31 billion dollars, and that was probably the recorded number in 2020. So it's massive. But then in comparison to that, we're looking at 50 million, oh yeah, sorry, this is all the stats you wanted. We're looking at 50 million pieces literally dumped in Ghana, Accra, weekly, 15 million weekly, with 40% of that on arrival being completely useless, not worth being like worn or otherwise. So I loved, I don't want to be this guy. I love the fact that we're here and we're doing this, but I think sometimes this is where we also have to take stock of this word sustainability, and sometimes the practices that are negatively affecting people, not industries, people. Like sometimes we keep on speaking, like these are people in Accra that must wake up to Salvation Army and otherwise, and all these brands, and sift through that and live on top of these dead white men's clothing. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done to try and bring it back. We're all trying. We're all here because we want to do better. But those stats are something that you obviously have to, you can never lose sight of that. So yeah, I don't really know if that was a question, but I just had the stats, so I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this also comes down to transparency.
Yeah.
Because what we tend to do is that we tend to look upstreams for transparency. So we look sort of ask the brands.
Upstream meaning?
As to ask the brands to be transparent, and
Yes.
then they ask the suppliers, and then up like that.
Yes.
But we seldomly look downstreams. So we never look at how the things that we collect end up in piles in Ghana. And one of the reasons that sort of we don't see where it ends up. There is no transparency about that. So the big corporations says like, yeah, but we collected it and we did our thing, and then it was sold to someone else, and then that ended up there, but that's not our fault. But how that transparency doesn't exist downstreams, and how it ends up in the rivers and lakes and.
With that, what role do you believe technology? Because everyone here has got a phone.
Yeah.
We're interacting with this thing for most of our day. How is it that we could use technology as a tool to bring about this transparency
Yeah.
that we so desperately want?
I will come to that right now.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, time is moving faster than I thought. So we move on to explore ideas and solutions on this topic. And here we have sort of my framework that I'm using. I call it 100% circular and 0% waste. And we use a lot of digital tools to develop ways of reducing waste and increase circularity. Transparency is a very important part of that. But this system, let's call it an ecosystem, even if it's not all connected. But how we sort of imagine is that we have digital tools for design and retail that can significantly reduce waste in the retail phase, but also in the design phase. Then we have digitally enhanced local manufacturing. And then we have the consumer phase, where we help the consumers through apps and through different things to make more informed decisions about their fashion consumptions, but also to take care of the garments once they're being used and when the customer doesn't want them anymore. To redistribute them, to remanufacture them, to work with service and upgrades, to give the garments or the textile products a second, third, and nth life.
This technology that you speak of, what base is it built off? Is that blockchain?
It's blockchain is one thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Do you see blockchain as a powerful tool, or
I
maybe
think,
shouldn't be throwing too much energy into that?
I think I think blockchain is great for some purposes.
Yeah.
But for other purposes, we shouldn't waste that energy, because it does consume energy. Even if the newer blockchain versions consume less energy, they still consume energy. So we should be careful about how we're using blockchain. I will come to that here as well. Yeah.
Sure.
And we imagine this circle cloud that maybe in some parts is blockchain based, that can take care of the information, for example, from the consumer, take care of information from manufacturing, and then give that to the designer, product developer, to the buyer to make better decisions, or to the consumer to help them take better decisions. So, and here...
Sorry, Jonas. Of those three elements, which do you think is the most important?
Sorry?
Those three elements, obviously being the manufacturer, the customer, which one do you think is the most important?
I think that it is most important that manufacturing is starting to make better choices.
Okay.
Because they are the ones who have the ability to be better informed in the supply chain. So I think that, but there also has to be pressure from the consumer. So and there also have to be pressure from the politicians. But I think manufacturing has the responsibility. Yes, there is a question.
Okay, hi, my name is Rizzi. So I'm in the art industry, and obviously within art we talk about decolonization. And now within fashion, I don't know anything. So maybe you've spoken about it, but I'm trying to educate myself in relationship to it. And now I'm hearing sustainability a lot, and I feel like there's a link between decolonization and sustainability. And I think that now when we think of decolonization, you're trying to break away from that circular understanding of what and how you think about, say, example, like curating art. And even when we're talking here now, we're relating it to the pharmaceuticals company, where everything related to chemicals. And now we're going back to the old way of making medicine, which in Africa has always been part of our narrative in terms of traditional medicine. So then for you, Theo, how then do you position yourself within this conversation and breaking away from certain ideas and definitions of defining movements that are happening right now or have already happened, and even positioning this in relationship to the Swedish embassy. That this is the point to between this is where conversations happen, and this I feel like because this is a workshop, why don't then we also start by workshopping how then we start to be the pioneers in terms of say with Rewoven, regenerizing, reweaving what it is to be an African defining. So I'm trying to understand how then to rethink about sustainability in relationship to decolonizing art. So I guess that I'm trying to link the two via my own understanding of how I see things. So I think that fashion and art have a linkage, but I think that there's certain things that are maybe, how do I say, burying, they're forming a barrier instead in terms of pioneering certain narratives. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah.
Cool. I don't know if I caught your whole question, but I'll speak about our approach at Rewoven and Future Fashion around, really reclaiming this narrative around sustainability. Like the rest of us, we've gotten the sort of European, Eurocentric information around sustainability. This is what sustainability means. We've spoken about data, tons of data. We're looking at data and all these things around what sustainability is. And when we actually take the time, and this is something that we did last year in creating the film with Zizi, was that what are we doing at home? What methodologies, what sort of stories have we been told, and how have we been brought up in a way that we could bring our own perspective to this conversation? Because like their perspective, the Swedes, the Europe, our perspective is also important. And while we can learn tons from them, there's also tons that we could share with them that they could take back and really use as valuable insights. And I think that's what Jonas was speaking about in all the insights that he was able to take from the conversation earlier in understanding how it is that we work. And yeah, I think that's been our approach. And just to speak on our relationship with the Swedes, we share a great relationship with the Swedish Embassy and the Swedish Institute purely because they've allowed us to tell our story through our own perspective with no sort of control over oh, you can't say this, oh no, you can't say that. They've just been like, hey, we think what you're doing is important. We share values around this topic and go out there and share the story. And Esetu spoke about this last year in her closing address as to how important it is for institutions such as these to have this sort of approach, because if they don't, then the stories don't get told, the perspectives don't get shared, the education doesn't happen, and especially the pride doesn't happen. Because the moment we reclaim sustainability as our own, we become proud, and we then we are really proud to tell our story. And just to share with you, just to also comment on you, with what local designers are doing here in South Africa, I think there's so many beautiful stories that we just don't get in the mainstream. And as somebody who wasn't in this industry before, I'm an accountant by profession, coming into this industry and actually spending time learning, speaking to people, listening, I've learned so much around, and I've grown really this space has got a really special place in my heart, and that's why every year we put on this event for us to come here and to feel proud and to share our stories. So I hope I answered your question.
I think I would like to sort of piggyback on that as well, especially when it comes to measuring sustainability. I think, and the Eurocentric way of doing it, it is a problem because we like I was Sweden and Germany, we love data. We have been obsessed with that for several hundred years. We have this when we're baking, we love, like, you have the deciliter and the milliliter, and it's super specific on how much should be to make a cake, and yeah. But then I had a project approved yesterday where we are going to take a completely different approach to sustainability, and we're not going to measure anything. I have not thought this through. This comes sort of, but instead we will look at patterns and symmetry. Because if we look at, I'll go back to this one. This is super complex, and it's almost like there's no. Sometimes it feels. It's no use in measuring it because it's so big. And also when we speak about circular economy, the circular economy, that sort of indicates that it will go on in infinity. But what happens if you try to measure infinity? You can measure two infinities, and you will have the same answer. They will be equally long. They will be an infinity long. So that's why we thought, okay, maybe we shouldn't bother too much with measuring sustainability, but instead trying to understand patterns and symmetry and have that approach to sustainability. This is a very unfinished thought. Maybe I will have reason to come back to that within a year from now. But yeah.
Setsu, I think you had a question.
Sorry, no, it was more of a comment around the conversation we're having about indigenous knowledge, sustainability, decoloniality, and just kind of piggybacking on that, and kind of the perspective that we have in this event, which is sustainability is decolonization. It necessarily is. And just, in our relationship, I guess, with the Swedish Institute is how do we tap into that indigenous knowledge that already knows what sustainability is, and some of the innovations and other solutions that are coming from the global north, and how do we fit that with what is already authentically us to enable what is for us. And I think that is the meshing, but it can get confusing in terms of obviously how the narrative is sold to people. And I think, there's a lot of work that used to be done in terms of unpacking that knowledge and making people understand what sustainability really is. Because a lot of the times we do end up thinking it's about these techniques and all of these cool, technologies and so forth. But the core of it, like what is the core of it? The core of it is about people, like Xavier was saying. The core of it is about our interconnectedness with one another and stuff. But how do we use these technologies, you know, to kind of enable that? I don't know, in a modern world.
I think very well put, because I when I listened to the talk earlier this morning, I sort of realized that, I'm going to speak about technology. So I'm going to speak a lot about what you say, like, these are the cool apps and these are the cool machines and all that. But that's not the only thing I'm thinking about. I'm also, there are more perspectives, and I would love to, speak more about craft and more about purpose and all that. But my presentation is on technology, so you just have to, transfer that into your context.
Sorry, I think we have.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Jonas. I'm not sure if it's like a question or a thought that's still formulating, and also, I don't expect you to speak on behalf of like the whole of the global north and their like fashion industries, but I'm just wondering, which is also just kind of like speaking to a lot of what has been raised in terms of like how we think about and embody sustainability as like African people on the continent, and how it is, and how it manifests in the global north and those fashion industries, right? And just in terms of like maybe unsettling, because I feel like also the relationship between people in the fashion industries or fashion industries of the global north, and when it comes to Africa, it still very much replicates like relationships rooted in like colonial histories, where there is still like when the person was speaking about like the shoving down of like a particular theory and understanding of sustainability down our throats. And I'm just wondering, maybe in your own personal capacity or like just with like formal fashion institutes that you may have dealt with through your work, if there is sort of like a relationship or being in relationship with sustainability from people who are of the global north and live there, that also like, that also makes them critical to how the concept, or like, the geographic positioning is part of the problem, but also the institutions and the corporations, and even on an individual level, like, because I think in different ways we're all part of the problem, but some people are part of the problem in bigger ways and like more historical ways that have become systematized. And I think, and knowing you're part of the problem humbles you, and maybe that might unsettle that like uneven power relationship where the global north is maybe also taking more of a back seat in pushing the sustainability agenda forward. So I'm just wondering if there is that kind of like critical self-awareness of how, as people, as a geopolitical sort of like positioning, and as institutions in it, like you also, obviously you can't speak for the whole country.
But I think it's a really good question, and I just have to think a little bit about. Generally, when I'm in sort of contexts within the textile industry, where we speak about sustainability, it is very much the sort of global north that's pushing the sustainability agenda, and they're not taking a step back. So big brands telling the suppliers what to do, and in many of the meetings, here's Mickey. Many of the meetings that I've been in. Around that, where everybody speaks, the suppliers from mainly Asia, they highlight this in every meeting and have been doing for 10 years, as long as this organization has existed. But still, it's the sort of global north that's setting the agenda. It's even so that we show with data that the manufacturers are actually doing better than the brands when it comes to sustainability. So they are performing better, but still the agenda is pushed by the global north. And this is, we are dynamic, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's move on to the sort of second part. So circular economy. The three important things, we have touched upon them already, but I'm going to mention them again. So number one, design for zero waste and pollution. And number two, keep products and materials in use. And three, regenerate natural systems. And these are the principles that I have developed my projects around. So number one, design for zero waste and pollution. Here we made a project together with a Swedish outdoor brand called Houdini Sportswear. And what we wanted to do was to create an on-demand system for sportswear. And the main reasons was to reduce returns or eliminate returns, but also eliminate end-of-seasons markdowns. And then there was also, of course, catering to more people's needs. So what we did was that we built a system for local manufacturing. So we had a little manufacturer next to the university. We built this virtual fitting room where the consumers sort of first made their avatar, adjusted it to their size and their body measurements, and then fitted a garment on top of that. And then you see that it's too short, this size, so then we pull the sleeve a little bit and make it fit. And then when the customer was happy with the fit, it's sent to manufacturing, and 3 hours later, it could be delivered to the consumer if we wanted to.
Was this run as a project?
This was a project, yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of adoption commercially, did it pick up?
No, because we didn't have an infrastructure around Borås that could handle this type of manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
So if we are right now starting this project again.
Okay.
Because what you see here, especially with let's see here, you see how it doesn't drape well, the fabric that doesn't drape well around the sleeves. There is new functionality now that makes the fabric drape much better. There's a question over here?
Yes.
I just wanted to find out because I may not have much knowledge on sustainability, but if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But when I look at also like brands that sell like homeware and all of that, you know, they'll say that maybe something's made out of bamboo and all of those things, right? And also, for example, like items like this, like where it's customized and all of that, won't it cost more money? And also, by it being sustainable, most of the sustainable items cost a lot of money. So for me, coming from a household, a middle class household, where I will not be able to purchase that bamboo makeup brush, which is going to cost me 100 rand, I can go to small streets and purchase the same thing for like 10 rand. I just want to find out if there is that sensitivity to communities that are not as privileged. And I know that also when it comes to other African countries, there are women that are creating things from scratch. You get what I mean? And when, for example, if somebody or someone that has money gets those women to create those things and then takes those things and then brands those things and makes it look nice, and then it comes back and gets sold to us for 5,000 rand, is that sustainable? I just want to find out if it's sustainable. Is it fair? You get what I mean? So I may be wrong, but I just know that when I go to Clicks and I want to buy eco tools, it costs more money. Mm-hmm. I just want to know, maybe it might cost more money because of the process, and maybe the process costs more money. But to me, it just feels like it's everything is like it's capitalism, so you know it's more money for the big guys, and I guess for me it's a cry for people that are able to make a change, mostly people of color that can make a change. I don't know, this is like it's so sensitive for me. I don't know if you guys get me, but
so yeah, but so for this project or that we did here, this right now, how it has developed, this isn't more costly than the normal garment, because you don't have to pay for end of season's markdown, you don't have to pay for returns, you don't have to pay for a lot of things, so this is, I mean, this is not a cheap garment to start with, but it's not cheaper, it's not more expensive than the normal one.
And I guess this also speaks to that aspirational.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to start somewhere. We have to do these things and imagine these futures for us to eventually get there. So I think we have to do something. We can't just stick with what it is that we've got.
Yeah, exactly. And this technology that's behind here is becoming cheaper, so and more affordable. Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to agree, obviously, with her sentiment, because I think, and this is why we always have to think very critically about the integration of sustainability, the narrative that is sold to us with our local context, and again, always integrating what sustainability really is. Because if it feels exclusive, then that's not sustainability, it's something else. Like you said, capitalism. The essence of, I believe, sustainability will always be necessarily inclusive. So in the context of sustainable fashion, one of the things that I'm so passionate about with African fashion is that African fashion has always been slow fashion. Slow fashion is, the language is only starting now. It's always been slow fashion. Like, from the materials are made from organic cotton. The garment itself is passed down. There's no textile waste in that. The way they cut, there's no offcuts left in that process because it's perfect squares and rectangles, and whatever's left, you use it as a doek. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that is why we're here, is to question what sustainability is and to question the knowing that has been given to us about it. And that's why I say there's different ways to know. And obviously there's one modality that we've been learning about sustainability, but there's other modalities. Like, we've been living sustainability our whole lives as Africans. Like, we've been just learning about it in different ways, but we've been in tune with the environment and nature for thousands and thousands of years. That's a knowledge that maybe we're not putting in journals and, you know, journal articles, and we're able to communicate in certain ways, but that knowledge is deep and that knowledge is powerful, and it has, like, we just have so much to contribute to the concept on sustainability. I think we actually have the most to contribute to the concept on sustainability. But again, it's about how do we integrate the happening around us in the world, you know, these technologies. And that is what Jonas, I think, is trying to do but we always need to keep it locally relevant. Like things like e-wallet, M-Pesa, like it came from solving a locally relevant problem using the technology of that is around us. But e-wallet wouldn't have come, we wouldn't have known e-wallet. They did it first, M-Pesa, because they were like, we're living in rural areas, there's this technology, but we need to send money to each other. And that's when it came. So yeah, but sustainability, you're right. If it feels exclusive, it's not sustainable. If it feels, sustainability is effortless, man. Like it's meant to be necessarily a concept where everyone feels at home, and that's what it is. And if you feel not that, then it's not sustainability, Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So
Last thing, I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to add to what she said. On one hand, I think there's also something to be said about the fact that most of us don't hold value for clothing anymore. Like, someone spent 10 hours making her outfit, and I think that deserves to be paid for. But at the same time, the same system that makes clothes really cheap also means we can't afford it either. So I think as we're moving forward, we have to find a middle ground of paying people for their labor, but also doing it in a way that's realistic for us.
Yeah.
Because it's not that it's expensive, like, it's just that someone's going to actually get to eat, but also you need to at the same time. Yeah.
So we wanted to then, for this project then, we sort of figure out a way to remove overproduction, to only manufacture what the customer wants, and to make it for that customer. But then we wanted to also reduce chemical impact and reduce use of energy and reduce water use. So then we're experimenting with a technology called color-reel, and this technology dyes the embroidery thread on the stitch, so you can dye on the millimeter, or as we have experimented with it, we can dye on the needle in the knitting machine. So you can have 16.7 million colors on each individual needle in the knitting machine. So this will give you a lot of opportunity to create new designs. And this technology, if we compare dyeing a garment all beige with this technology, or dyeing it with 16.7 million colors, it will not be any difference in cost. It will be the same cost, because it's just a digital printing that dyes the yarn that goes through the machine. So what you see here in the middle, this is the first sample of a dress. It's supposed to look like the dress on the right. That's the pattern we're going for. But there are some things that we have to solve before that. So right now it looks like the one in the middle. But with this technology, we can. It doesn't use any water. It uses hardly any energy and very little chemicals. So it's, from a sustainability or from a environmental perspective, it's really, really good. This is also rather aspirational, since nobody has been doing this before, and we started to do this 2 months ago. So we have no idea about how expensive this will be or how cheap it will be, but
Got to start somewhere.
we gotta start somewhere. Yeah. But here we can sort of, the idea here is that we can, you can have a garment look exactly like you want it. And now to the transparency. So we did a project together with a local fashion brand called Gina Tricot. Well, they're not super local, they're in all Europe. But what we wanted to explore was, how can we work with transparency? So we teamed up with this company called Papertail, and we created a collection, a capsule collection of 50 garments that's completely transparent all the way to the cotton field. And here we have an app, so we fit each garment with an RFID tag that the consumer can read with their phone and get the whole transparency breakdown here. You get the climate impact, and then from fiber formation all the way through yarn formation, how it moves with the transportation, how it ends up in my wardrobe, and there it is, and I registered that in my wardrobe. And when I do that, Papertail gives $1 to charity and $1 to environmental objectives. And here also comes the wage transparency for the workers. So you can see that the worker was paid according to law. That has its drawbacks, but we have to start somewhere. And also when they were paid. And this is then verified in the blockchain, that transaction. And what this company, Papertail, is building right now is a workers app. So right now, it says that it's verified if it comes from the company's ERP system, but with the app, it will not say verified until the worker has said, I have received my payment according to law. And this company, Papertail, is paying a little bit more than what the law requires, but not much more, but they're trying to set some kind of example. Mm-hmm. So here you get the full breakdown of the transparency of a product. And you can also visit the factory.
I think we have a question here.
I think this is, sorry, I'm Jesse Naidu, I'm from Clothes to Good.
Yeah.
So we're a post-consumer, a used clothes recycler in South Africa. One of your, H&M is one of our customers. Yeah. So I think what Xavier and the guy said earlier is that listen to your customers, right? And on Twitter, a person said, don't give it to Clothes to Good because they'll take the good items and they'll dump the rest, right? It's going to go to landfill. And then we listened to it and we thought we were pretty upset because that's not what we do. But to solve that problem is very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got tons and tons of clothes coming in. You have to decide where everything goes across all 6 recycling levels. So only about 30% is in the correct form that can be reused. The rest has to be either upcycled, downcycled, or if it's moldy, incinerated, right? So to solve that problem in South Africa, very expensive problem is if I data capture it manually, it's going to take forever to give it. Yeah. So if a mother sends me 6 kilograms of clothes in a bag, I need to be able to tell her what happened to the 6 kilograms, yes? So we had to take these weight scales. The weight scales now has to talk to my database that goes onto the internet to tell people what's happening. Yeah. It seems like a pretty simple thing to do. Definitely not. As you as an engineer and me as an engineer understand, very complicated. Yeah. We had to, so in South Africa, in our third world country, so we had an engineer come in from India who just came in and said, no problem, it's an easy solution. He's going to use Internet of Things to let the scale talk to our database, thinking that in South Africa, you can go to any IT store and buy an Internet of Things. God, you can't. So we had to import one from China. And then it took 6 months to get even just that technology. So we have different challenges here for transparency. Very different challenges. So it's a solution that exists, but the challenge to do it here, if this problem was in Sweden, it wouldn't be a big problem. You'd have solved it in days. Yeah. It took us 6 months. Yeah. So just to give you an understanding of access to it even. Yeah. Yeah.
No, exactly, yeah. No, so, but this was an interesting project from many perspectives. One was that we have previously assumed that customers are not interested in transparency, and there is no sort of value added to that. But in this case, this showed differently. It showed that there's a huge interest and people are willing to pay extra for knowing where the garments come from and how they perform in the value chain. Mm-hmm. And also that people are being paid. I think it's very important.
Jonas?
Time's up?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I have to just show you one thing. So one thing, we've talked about keeping things alive. Yeah. So we thought about this and how to, make sure things are kept alive for longer. So what we did was that we engaged in building a robot, an autonomous delivery robot. We call it Hugo. That could sort of help with distribution between users of fashion products. This has 0.002% of the climate impact from normal distribution truck, and it at the fourth of a cost, essentially. And then we also want to connect this with the garments. So there is battery-free or battery-less Bluetooth chips that we can put on our garments, and with the cell phone, the system can understand which garments are used more and which are used less, and propose that you get rid of the garments you're not using, and also keeping things alive by doing that. So how we want to do, it could be something like this. So you receive a text from your sweater that says, hey, I've been sitting in your wardrobe for the last 6 months. Don't you love me anymore? Well, it's not you, it's me. I've changed and we're not a match anymore. Okay, do you want to sell me? Yeah, you'll be better off with somebody else. Okay, there's actually one who's willing to pay 40 euros for me at eBay. Should I sell myself? Yes. Okay, can Hugo pick me up tonight? Yes, pick up at 8 o'clock. Okay, great. And then it's off to somebody else who can enjoy the garment.
One thing I really love about that is the integration of different systems and different technology into solving a fashion problem. But you've included logistics, you've included, Internet of Things, it's time-based as well, which is really interesting. And I think for me, what's really important and something I'm really passionate about is that, like I said, like e-wallets, like local context, like you spoke of, but like I think we just need to think expansively around like these issues, listen to our customers and actually find out, cool, our customers interested in this, but I could solve this problem by applying something that's totally unrelated. I could take something from logistics tech, I can take something from fintech, agri-tech, ed-tech, and I could integrate those things into a new product, new technology in this fashion space that could bring value to, something that you never thought could, bring it to that space. And I'm talking to you because, like, I think you and I have a rapport around what it is that we're talking about. Yeah, super.
And this is, I think, this technology is sort of coming now. It's difficult to get these Bluetooth tags, but they are not more than, I think they're like £1 or something. So they're super cheap. So they could easily be integrated into garments. So I just want to share one more thing.
Go for it.
Yeah. So we had a really fun project this winter and this summer called Big Do, where we worked together with South Africa, with Mickey, wherever he is. He's here somewhere. Oh, there he is, yeah. The idea was to sort of understand how can we use local resources, such as old kitchen appliances, old material, plastic waste, but also local creativity, to create these sort of municipal impact hubs, to make products out of waste from the local society. We imagined we could make sunglasses and flip-flops and needle-punched felts and stuff like that. So we worked with the fashion agent, who's here from South Africa, MST Black, Mickey, and Under Armour was a part of this project as well. And what it ended up with was a flip-flop that was made out of textile waste. So we took textile waste, grinded it, put it in like a heat press, so it melted, and then became a flip-flop. And then we added this beautiful print to the flip-flop. And this print, Mickey, you have to say if I'm right, but this print is sort of a map over how local waste pickers in Johannesburg move through the city of Johannesburg. So that was that project. That was a really fun project. And we hope to continue that collaboration
exchange,
in the future. Yeah.
Love that.
And then the last one, regenerate natural systems. Well, I already spoke about that, but we want to figure out how can we make garments that move with the natural cycles. Our starting point here was the Japanese cherry blossom and the ideas around that called mono no aware. That means to appreciate the transience of things. So the cherry blossom blooms, it falls to the ground, it becomes nutrition, and then it becomes a new tree and new cherry blossom, and on like that. In sort of, within the natural cycles of carbon and water and all that. So we made garments that sort of follow the same cycles. We worked with this company called Goringo Design Studio and the concept called Stream Materia, and we used 3D printing to make garments that functioned as a leaf. So they were built up like a leaf, and they would also biodegrade like a leaf, with essentially the same speed as a leaf. So, and we will continue with this project in the future. And then the last one. Yeah. So, here we also worked with this brand called Houdini, where we wanted to use the inherited properties of wool, because wool is a great fiber. It doesn't become dirty as much. It doesn't smell. Well, unless you're sweaty, then it smells like a dog. But it has lots of beautiful inherited properties. And we wanted to use new knitting technologies to strengthen those properties, to create better insulation, better ventilation, better wind resistance or water resistance and whatnot. And we're doing this with wool that has been treated with very few chemicals. And this wool, we can throw it in the compost, and it will, Houdini has made experiments where they eat the underwear after half a year when they have biodegraded. And then they come back as mushrooms, and then you can eat those mushrooms.
Don't know if you want to be indulging in that.
I don't know. So, but anyway, so just skipping to the last slide. Thank you very much for having me here.
I think before Jonas closes off, is there anything that you want to leave us with? Obviously, you're going back to Sweden tomorrow, so.
No, yeah, I mean, I think those principles of the circular design are very powerful, and I think if we start to think about them when we design our products, I think that's a great way of doing it. So remember that. If you only remember one thing, remember that.
Super. Thanks, Jonas.